Yeah, well, the SCREE, that threshold was increased significantly a few years ago by you, the legislature, from about 28 to 50,000.
30,000.
And that doesn't include, as I mentioned in the Mitchell-Lama Borough President Task Force hearings in Brooklyn and Manhattan, that's not your adjusted gross income. That's 50,000 is your income without taking into account things like Social Security subsidy, and there are a number of different sources of income that are not included in that 50,000. So I encouraged everybody, if they were close or if they thought they were close, to make sure that they go reapply for SCREE since again the legislature raised the levels.
So I'll just ask before moving on the other quick questions. It would probably be helpful to send out a notice to residents for them to understand what would be the provisions to protect them if and when changes were to occur. And I believe probably most residents may not be aware of the protections that are available if they have SCREE. I mean, we have these opportunities that are out there that they may not have any awareness of.
We've done that at every one of, we've required that at every one of the developments that
I would
considered going out.
Respectfully say, I have 4 Mitchell-Lamas in our district, and we have several that changes are concerning to them that they're hearing about, and a lot of times they're asking questions because material is not being provided to them. So it's something we can work through collectively itself. Moreover, it talks through in the testimony about the open window RFP and seeking essentially good candidates, but it doesn't define what is a good candidate.
Mm-hmm. I think a good candidate in the context of Mitchell-Lama program, Assemblymember, a good candidate is a Mitchell-Lama project that's seeking to refinance, or a developer that's seeking to work with a Mitchell-Lama to refinance. So that RFP went out. I can't remember what it was, but it was, I think, early May. Went up on our website. We did a fair amount of press and public announcements about it. So the community, I think, is aware of it. And Mitchell-Lamas in particular, I think we reached out to make sure that they were aware.
Is the success of the management company at the respective Mitchell-Lama put into that criteria of it being a good candidate?
I assume I'll ask Mark to comment on that, but we absolutely consider the management company.
We don't want to throw good money after bad, so to speak, and by financing a development where the property manager is not performing. We have annual field reports, field visits, and we've been working. We've also been working in terms of which candidates. My office has been working on prioritizing where the needs might be greatest, and there's a bit of a balance to strike there too, because where the need is the greatest, sometimes they have the least capacity to handle a financing, to the underwriting that goes into financing, and also my office has been working on training sessions and the like, and we're going to be rolling out soon.
So to tie this all together, I would ask if you can at some point to send over the success rates of the Article 2 to Article 11 conversion that was alluded here, but in terms of the breakdown of that, so we can be aware of that. But then lastly, what's most important is for the residents and the constituents themselves. So what is the mechanism for a resident to convey concerns and challenges that they have at their respective Mitchell-Lama complexes? I think a lot of times people have concerns, they have challenges, but they don't know where to go. They see problems that have been continual, that there's really not much guidance happening in terms of how those repairs would occur.
Yep, that's a great question. Is a bit of a difference if you live in a Mitchell-Lama rental or if you live in a co-op. The other thing other important thing to determine that I told folks in Brooklyn and Manhattan last month is to determine which your supervising agency is, whether it's HPD or HCR. Oftentimes people will spend a lot of time trying to find the right office in HCR when it's an HPD supervised development. And I told them they should, their first line of defense is to go to the property manager, who can tell them right off the bat. And in the co-ops, again, we walk that delicate balance between trying to support them and oversee them compliance and self-governance. So the co-ops all are run by boards. The boards have legal counsel and they have professional property managers or self-management professionals. So they should go first. Their first complaint should be to the board or the property manager. If they're not getting help there, they can contact my office, and we have a Mitchell-Lama helpline. that I can make available.
So I also then in turn heard you say for the residents of Concourse Village, since that's one of the state-operated one who are having challenges and are actually having to change management companies because of that, that they can go to you and to your office for follow-up. If that's what you're agreeing to, that would be very helpful.
Yep. I've been to Concourse Village twice.
Oh,
actually.
I have no doubt. Well, anyone that wants to survive in the South Bronx should come by Concourse Village and the 1,883 units that are there. The challenges that are happening in terms of the ceilings and the roofing, et cetera. So we appreciate that. Chair, I'm done at this time.
Mr. Pichardo.
I want to make sure that my colleagues have ample time to ask their questions, that everybody who wants to come in and present to have their time as well. I have two questions. First of all, I want to follow up something that you just said earlier. Let's say in the scenario that either management or the board is being non-compliant and not forthcoming with information, is there a more efficient or faster way to find out what exactly the type of Mitchell-Lama a resident or a tenant lives in?
Sure, they can call my office. They can call the Mitchell-Lama helpline. Each one of the Mitchell-Lamas also has a housing management representative. Mm-hmm. I brought some of the directors from my staff here, and the housing management representatives. They can be told if they call the helpline or they call our general line. They can be told who their representative is for their building.
Great. And then secondly, something that the chairman alluded to earlier about the concentration of Mitchell-Lamas that are being refinanced or that type of getting that type of resource in the Bronx. Is there any plan right now of helping other developments getting refinancing, not only in the Bronx, but right now in the city of New York? Is there a percentage or a number that we can point to?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question. Mitchell-Lama projects elsewhere in the city?
Yes.
I don't know if we have which ones we have in our pipeline at the moment. Do we have any?
We have a similar sort of ratio to the Mitchell-Lamas in the Bronx that have been refinanced.
Sure.
We in the UDC portfolio, which is a third of the Mitchell-Lamas, spread out all across the city and the state. We've gone through the majority of those refinanced. Remember, so that's about 24 out of the 31 UDC Mitchell-Lamas. Those were a priority of the governor because of they were in some of the worst shape of the other ones. Also, keep in mind that these are all privately owned, government regulated, and so we can't force Mitchell-Lamas Mitchell-Lama to refinance with us, and there's the option to buy out. What we can do, though, is to provide all the economic incentives that we can. But sometimes we also have Mitchell-Lamas that have refinanced with private banks, and when they do, we work with the bank to make sure that we check the terms, make sure the Mitchell-Lama is not getting ripped off, on the one hand, and then we make sure that in their loan documents that they include language that HCR remains a supervisory agency and it's subject to all of our supervision, so they get the benefit of the private financing while they still stay in the program.
That's it for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Sepulveda.
Clearly, the chairman and the two chairmen have given you general questions about Mitchell-Lama, but I want to focus on the one that's in my district, which is Jamie Towers. You indicated you've refinanced 24 Mitchell-Lama developments for 5,700 apartments to date. Is Jamie Towers a development that was included in that refinance program?
I think, Al, do you know? Al Walcott's my director of housing audits and accounts.
Jamie Towers is Mitchell-Lama that did a private refinancing and probably would not be included in.
Can we ask for the purpose of can you come to the microphone
so everybody can hear?
and introduce yourself?
My name is Alfred Walcott. I'm the
button.
The red button.
Actually, it's on. It turns red. You're good to go. There you go.
It was on.
Yeah, it was on. You're just very soft-spoken.
Yeah, my name is Alfred Walcott. I'm the director of housing audits and accounts in HCR. And with respect to the Jamie Towers refinance, Jamie Towers was refinanced with a private lender. I believe the numbers that we speak about in the presentation relates to projects that were refinanced and agreed to remain affordable for a certain period of time. I don't think that Jamie Towers refinancing was included in that list, but it was refinanced earlier.
When they're privately refinanced, what kind of oversight does your agency retain over the development?
We can't, as Mark Colon said, the companies remain an Article 2. They continue to enjoy the tax abatement and benefits of being an Article 2. As such, they continue to abide by the regulations of the Article 2 provisions.
Do you have any input in the financing terms? Are you oversighting the financing terms when they go private?
We have to approve under the statute, we have to approve any additional debt against the property. We have to approve if there's going to be a conveyance, a new owner. We vet the owner, make sure that they have experience and the capacity to run a Mitchell-Lama project. In the co-op situation, it was a bit different than in the rental, where we had always had the will to want to preserve the co-ops, but not necessarily the way before this, where there wasn't a whole lot of state resources to provide. And that's why we worked with private banks who were kind of were very wary of lending into a cooperative, particularly a cooperative with limited rents and limited incomes. We established a program by which we could be. When you asked about are they still under our supervision, we do have some flexibility where we allow the lending bank to take a security interest in the reserves, and they also set maybe higher reserve rates than we do. We allow them to because they're financing, it's their collateral. So it was a way that without financing, without the money before, we were able to keep a lot of the Mitchell-Lama co-ops going. It's also a case with the co-ops. The co-op boards, they're not normally. Co-op boards are very wary of wanting to increase maintenance rates. In the low interest lending environment that we've had over the last few years, though, we've worked with and encouraged the co-ops before we had this year's additional funding from the state. We encouraged Mitchell-Lama co-ops to go out and lock in low interest rates and do capital repairs now at a rate that they couldn't get in the past. And that was in a lot of those, and that was like the Jamie Towers loan.
Thank you.
Mr. Linares.
Thanks, sir. Okay. Good evening. Well, thank you for your testimony. I didn't hear all of it, but I have a big picture question to ask, given the desperate and dire need that most neighborhoods have of affordable housing. And when I say affordable, I mean at the level where family are making their income in given neighborhoods. And so the question that I have, if programs like the Mitchell-Lama are clearly successful, as indicated by your testimony and also by sheer evidence across the country, but particularly in New York City and New York State, and yet I observe that things are at a point with this very successful program where we see a shift to privatize many of them. How can we reconcile a program that is successful as this one? We are in desperate need to create housing for families, particularly fixed-income families that retire, or working families that are, having a hard time with the high rents with the private sector. Now that we injected at least a small portion of the $2 billion at the state level, how can we use this model to put in the mix of an aggressive and robust initiative, what is it that we need to bring in place from your experience, given the crisis that we face throughout most of our neighborhoods?
Well, Mr. Assemblyman, you asked exactly the right question, and I think you answered it as well. What we need is the resources to invest, for the state to invest in fighting this, what is exactly, as you say, a crisis. The Mitchell-Lama, preservation of the Mitchell-Lama portfolio is certainly one piece of the puzzle, and the Mitchell-Lama portfolio has some really extraordinary aspects to it, which is why we, as I said earlier, which is why we intend to use part of that $2 billion to invest in refinancing the rest of the Mitchell-Lama portfolio that's under our management, the remaining, whatever it is, 15 or a dozen projects, most of which that are all throughout the state. So that is one of our commitments. But the rest of the $2 billion goes to investing in all models of affordable housing at all levels, at all income levels, high, middle income, or not high, but middle income, low income, extremely low income, and then supportive housing for special needs populations. You're exactly right. The need is great, particularly here in the 5 boroughs. That's why the governor laid out that 5-year plan. That's why we intend to put it to work as quickly as we can get this memorandum of understanding agreed to.
How would you break down the $2 billion that we have reserved when it comes to preservation with current housing needs that we have and new units?
It's about half preservation and half new units. And that there's a different split geographically, but it's about half preservation, which we think is a good use and efficient use of the state's capital.
Well, just a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Since this program was initiated by the federal government primarily with huge investment, and if we're talking about the need being so huge, the state alone cannot do it.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, it is, I don't know if this is where you're going, but it is, I would say 2 things. One is we work closely with the city, no question. Our partners at the city, HPD and HTC, we work on deals with them every day here in the 5 boroughs, obviously. And the intention of our $2 billion of capital is to be additive, not replace the city's capital. And the mayor's made a substantial commitment of zone to affordable housing, and this is just additive to that. Unfortunately, the federal government has somewhat left the field here. And there's all kinds of reasons for it, whether it's congressional inaction or a succession of administrations, not this one, but some past administrations that have not seen HUD, which was once the crown jewel of the urban development. Haven't seen HUD as really playing an important role in the development of new affordable housing. But they've left the stage largely. So all those wonderful programs, the HUD 202s that house our seniors, all those programs are done. And they've left, I think, the state and local governments very much hanging and responsible for picking up the mantle and creating our own, in effect, Mitchell-Lamas, and funding them ourselves, by the way. We work with HUD where we can, but HUD doesn't have the capital. I mean, they just don't come to the table at the affordable housing. With the exception of the Federal Housing Administration, they really don't come to the table with very much in this area.
So correct me, last question, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in the last 15 years, there have been no significant funding coming from the federal government.
Very little. I mean, certainly for the development of new affordable housing. I mean, we can get you exact numbers, but there's nothing of any substance. Section 8 vouchers is a different ballgame, and I'm pleased to note that the president's last budget that he's put forward for this year actually expands substantially the Section 8 program. It expands substantially the low-income housing tax credit program. There's a very important bill in the Congress right now. Senator Schumer and Senator Cantwell from Washington have put forward to double the size of the federal low-income housing tax credit program, which would be tremendous for New York City, really tremendous, and make some other very important technical changes. But, first of all, it's the last budget of an outgoing president, so who knows where it'll go. And it really is the first commitment of that kind that we've seen in years. It's a shame, but it is just the facts on the ground.
Thank you very much. Back
Thank
to you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Blake, for one follow-up.
Just wanted to tie back on a question asked earlier as well. So very specifically, what is the process for tenant protection and resident protection if there are challenges that they have with either the management board and/or with their complex? And then separately tied to this is what are the protections for individuals on the waiting list that are on the waiting list themselves?
Sure. There's a couple of different avenues for remedies. For people on the wait list, people who've been, or people who are trying to succeed their family members in their house to keep their Mitchell-Lama apartment. If they are turned down by the housing company, the housing company has to provide a written determination, and they have the right to appeal to HCR through an administrative process. And we review. Sometimes we overturn that appeal, and this is without the tenant having to go to court, so they don't have to spend money on a lawyer or the like. They still, if they don't get the remedy that they need, that they want there, then they have to file an Article 78 in Supreme Court.
Does that appeal process occur only in the instance of succession rights, or for anyone that's on the wait list?
Successions, I think also for applicants that are all applicants that are turned down. If you're denied admission, you have the right to appeal to HCR.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Commissioner.
sir. Thank you very much.
Deputy Commissioner. Thank you so much. Our next testifier will be Julie Walpert, Assistant Commissioner, Housing Supervision, New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. And let me just say this, as chair of this committee, it is 7:30 now, and we probably shouldn't kind of move as expeditiously as possible if we want to get to everyone that's testifying. Ms. Walpert, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Wright, Subcommittee Chairman Blake, and members of the committee. My name is Julie Walpert, and I am the Assistant Commissioner for the city's Mitchell-Lama program. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about the HPD's program. I'm going to skip around my testimony a little bit because you've given a lot of the introduction, so bear with me. When the Mitchell-Lama program is While the Mitchell-Lama program is universally considered a success today, it got off to a slow start. It failed to attract investors because a commitment of 50 years of affordability was initially required. The requirements were lowered to 35 years, but then with little uptake, the requirements were again lowered to 20 years. The program produced approximately 140,000 units of rental and cooperative units, 62,000 of these units in the city. Whether HPD or New York State Division of Housing Community Renewal supervises the Mitchell-Lama program, it depends on who gave the initial financing. Each agency promulgates its own rules and supervises developments independently. Currently, HPD's Division of Housing Supervision oversees 96 developments with a total of 45,000 units, with 2/3 co-op and 1/3 rental units. As the supervisory agency, HPD enforces the Mitchell-Lama rules and offers technical assistance and guidance to Mitchell-Lama housing companies. But it's important to note that HPD does not provide day-to-day management of these properties or oversee the boards of directors. HPD also ensures that developments are maintained both physically and financially by conducting administrative audits and doing periodic physical inspections. We supervise waiting lists and pre-approve admissions, approve maintenance and rent increases, and contracts greater than $100,000. I'd now like to take the opportunity to discuss one of the highly discussed aspects of the program, namely the privatization or buyout from the Mitchell-Lama program. Under state law, a Mitchell-Lama development has the right to buy out after 20 years by prepaying its mortgage. We lost 60 Mitchell-Lama developments by prepaying, representing 18,000 units throughout the city to privatization. In the mid-2000s, it was difficult to compete with economic returns that the private market offered. During the recent recession, we didn't lose any Mitchell-Lamas up until this past year. However, as market conditions continue to improve, we're again faced with some recent buyouts and the prospect of additional Mitchell-Lamas that are now considering buying out of the program. We want to maintain the affordability of these developments for the purpose that the housing was created. To that end, HPD has been working to find creative ways to retain these developments as affordable housing. In partnership with our sister agency, HDC, we have increased the availability of loans for Mitchell-Lamas. The Mitchell-Lama Preservation Program offers loans and mortgage refinancing at favorable terms as an inducement for Mitchell-Lamas to remain in the program. These loans can be used for capital repairs so that the buildings can continue to address physical needs such as elevator, heating plant, and roof replacements. Along with repair loans, HDC also offers engineering and technical support to ensure the work performed is of the highest quality and that the loan funds are used appropriately. To address concerns about lack of adequate information and disclosure about the consequences of a buyout, such as the loss of property tax exemptions, we amended the rules and requirements for a cooperative to buy out. As a result of these changes, shareholders are now better informed and have more opportunities to approve or disapprove a buyout than in the past. We also strengthened the rules for rental buyouts. Tenants of Mitchell-Lama Rentals now receive a notice of an intended buyout at least 365 days in advance and access to many corporate documents. Additionally, the owner must meet with the tenants at least 60 days prior to exiting the program. These requirements help to ensure that the effects of a buyout has on tenant and co-op owners are fully disclosed and give tenants a chance to plan for the transition. Despite these additional provisions that ensure that residents have full information regarding privatization, under New York state law, owners and shareholders ultimately have the right to buy out of the program. For shareholders in Mitchell-Lama cooperatives, New York City's ever-increasing real estate prices make exiting the program an attractive option. Currently, a shareholder vacating an apartment at a Mitchell-Lama cooperative, which remains in the program, will only receive back the amount of the original purchase price. Recognizing the interest co-op owners have in privatizing, in order to capture some of the increased value of their apartments, HPD created the Article 2 to Article 11 program. The program offers shareholders interested in privatization an alternative affordability program. The 2 to 11 program is structured so that for those looking to sell apartments, prices rise over time but are capped below market so that they will be affordable to households earning between approximately $78,000 and $100,000 for a family of 3. In markets where the sales prices are much higher than the current Mitchell-Lama resale prices, providing some level of return coupled with the continued tax exemption can be incentive enough for the development to opt into the Article 11 program and to retain long-term affordability. Co-ops and rental developments that opt to convert to Article 11 will be subject to regulatory agreement, continue to receive the same shelter rent tax exemption as a Mitchell-Lama, will have access to HPD's and HDC's loan programs. Mitchell-Lama developments can also serve in another important function in the mayor's housing plan. Underutilized land on Mitchell-Lama developments can be a resource to develop affordable housing. Where such opportunities exist, new housing could be created and the Mitchell-Lama Housing Company would reap the financial benefits of developing such land. It could use the proceeds of a land sale or lease to finance capital needs, thereby reduce the amount of funds it would need to borrow for such purposes or shore up its finances so that it can keep rent or maintenance charges down. Finally, I would like to point out the important role the state legislature can play in helping the city preserve this important housing stock. HDC is a critical partner in financing the preservation of Mitchell-Lama buildings and uses state-allocated private activity bond volume cap to do so. We support Assembly Bill A10255 by Assemblyman Magnarelli, I apologize, that would reauthorize the Bond Allocation Act and ensure the timely allocation of volume cap to the city. We also support S7895 by Senator Golden, which increases HDC's outstanding bond authority by $1.25 billion and will allow it to continue financing the preservation and creation of affordable housing without interruption. The city is also requesting the legislature's support for new legislation that will improve the finances of Mitchell-Lama buildings by ensuring that over-income tenants pay appropriate surcharges. Unlike other affordable housing programs, tenants in Mitchell-Lama developments are not required to pay a certain percentage of their income toward rent. The maximum surcharge that may be assessed against Mitchell-Lama tenants earning the maximum allowable income is capped at 50% of base rent. In some cases, higher-income residents of Mitchell-Lama buildings are paying a small percentage of their monthly income towards below-market rent. The city is proposing legislation to increase the maximum surcharge for both rental and cooperative developments from 50% to 200%, which will not only provide more fairness, but will also be used to address maintenance and other operating costs in the building. Finally, the city appreciates allocations that the state has made in the budget specifically to be used as capital grants for the rehabilitation and preservation of Mitchell-Lama housing. Although these funds are only allocated to the state at this time, we would welcome direct allocations to the city and would be able to put the funds to good use for capital improvements. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the Mitchell-Lama program. This housing is clearly an important affordable housing resource, and we welcome the opportunity to work with you more to ensure the continuation of this vital program. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.